Walter, thank you so much for being with us today here at the Fluent English Pro podcast. I'm really happy to have a fellow teacher or language coach with me today.
Thank you for having me, David. It's a pleasure.
Amazing. Uh, I know you are a language coach. Yes, you work with professionals. So we have like a similar audience here. And I'm sure all the knowledge you're going to share is specifically addressed to the profile of listener we have. Tell us a little bit more about yourself. How did you end up becoming a language coach and helping professional not only with languages but also with cultures? Yes, because like those things are linked together closely.
Right. Yeah. So I started right now, the work I do these days is life and language coaching. So I do both. I do with some clients, I work more in language coaching, and then with others, life coaching. Sometimes I do life coaching in a foreign language. For example, today I had a
Mm.
conversation with a woman from Italy, and she speaks Italian, Spanish, and a bit of English. And we had that conversation in Spanish. So I have live coaching conversations in 5 different languages: Spanish, English, German, Italian, and Portuguese. And the way I got into language coaching and how I got into coaching in general was basically through my passion for languages and for learning in general.
That is a great segue to my first question, which is you state that language learning is not just communication, it's also personal growth. Like it's kind of one thing. Yeah. How can learning a new language or a second language or a third language help a person grow personally, professionally, or even like reshape their identity or how they view themselves?
I love that question because language learning and personal growth are all about getting uncomfortable. And when we want to grow, when we want to upgrade ourselves and become a new version of ourselves, do something that we weren't able to do in the past, we need to be willing to be uncomfortable. And that's what happens when we're learning a language. We don't want to speak because we are, we might be, we sometimes I hear people say they lack confidence or they are afraid or they don't want to make mistakes. They worry about what others might tell, and I hear the same in when people like, I'm from Argentina, I'm from Buenos Aires, Argentina, and I hear this the same from locals or native speakers speaking their own language. So those are similar challenges to those that we face in our personal life, in our professional life. So I see that when we practice that in language learning, when we are willing to get uncomfortable, then sometimes, not always, but oftentimes we see new results in our personal life or in our professional life, in our general personal growth.
Mhm. Will this be something related to what I usually mention in this podcast? Something related to the transferability of skills, like a skill you develop in an aspect on your life can be transferred to another aspect of your life.
Yeah, I really like that idea, and that's something that I don't know if it's true or not, or to what extent, but I choose to believe that that's something. And in the work that I do as a language coach, I try to leverage all the skills and all the knowledge and all the expertise of my previous professions or what I did in the past. To give you an example, as a language coach, sometimes I work on accent coaching, especially for people who move to Argentina or Uruguay, or they just like the sound of Argentinian Spanish or Uruguayan Spanish. And I coach them on Rio Platense Spanish. And in order to deliver that coaching, I fully use my skills as a musician because I used to be a piano teacher and I can work with sound. And I really used all that and I put that to the service of me working as a language coach and as an accent coach. So all of us have previous experiences and we can choose to put them to the service of the new things that we are doing. So I believe that we can transfer all sorts of things.
Mhm. Can you expand a bit more in terms of what life skills a person can acquire or develop through learning a language? You just mentioned confidence, which I think is important, like the ability to speak in public is another one. What are others you can highlight?
Oh, there's so many. I think that basically that's a great playground to really learn about how you like learning, what works best for you. And in my experience, as I went on to learn different languages, I learned about my learning preferences. For example, I learned that I preferred to learn on my own for a number of years. That was my preference, like self-directed learning. And I was able to contrast like what was it like to learn on a with a one-on-one teacher, or taking a course, an online course, or learning in a group environment and learning on my own. And then what I noticed is that some of those learnings, like what I learned about the learning process, was something that I could use in other spaces, in other with other skills.
Totally agree. Totally agree with that. Okay, that is like in life skills. If we focus that down a little bit towards professionals, how can this language learning process and life learning process can enhance or can help a professional have maybe a better performance at work, or maybe open career opportunities, or maybe have a more fulfilling life?
Mm, beautiful. So I believe that it it's connected to communication skills in general. And we as professionals, we need to sharpen our communication skills, our soft skills, and not only in terms of like the inner aspects, as I usually like to refer to in terms of like the mindset or the courage, confidence, all that. There's also this ability of refining or going to the point of the message, or being precise with the language, like practicing different types of communication, like in different settings and different contexts. When we are learning a language, sometimes we practice the different registers, like if we are speaking more formally or more informally. And there are opportunities to refine that even in our first language, to get it more accurate with that. And practicing that with a foreign language, maybe sometimes it increases our consciousness around that, how we are communicating as professionals, and what could we be working on, or what could we improve upon in terms of when we are communicating with others, with colleagues, with a team, for team leaders especially, how they can practice more kindful communication. And that's a strange word that I love, that word that is similar to mindful. But I really like kindful and the idea of kindfulness. And how can we bring more kindfulness to our conversations? How can we be more, have more goodwill for other people in terms of our attitudes? And those are things we can practice and are can be very valuable, especially in these times of AI and technology.
Yeah, now that you touch on that point or on those points, so you mentioned the external aspects of language learning, the internal as well, introducing kindfulness, which is I think a beautiful term, and I really like it. Uh, Sometimes a perspective is needed on language, on life, on what it means to be a professional. What do you think are mindset shifts that professionals should have in order to become or to perform well as language learners, and to integrate all those skills either to their professional life or to their own personal lives?
I think that a good starting point is really taking a look at what's important to me right now. And in language learning communities, I often hear that people are more concerned with speaking. And when I ask, or when I get curious on that, what I see is that sometimes they would like to increase their comprehension. And for some reason, maybe they think that the only way or the ultimate goal should be to be able to speak. And that's what I need to focus on that right now. And maybe that sounds counterintuitive. And I believe that it's good to have clarity on what we need and what is important to us right now. It might be speaking, or it might be maybe I need to practice my listening skills. Maybe I need to work on that. And who knows? As a result, maybe my speaking skills could improve. So I think that
Hmm.
it's important to have clarity on what we need to first, what why this matters to us right now in improving our language skills in this age where I heard people a couple months ago, I heard somebody say, "Oh, I need to improve my English because I need it for work. I have this meetings and we have the daily calls." And at the same time, it's like maybe with AI, I won't need it soon, or maybe it won't be as needed in the future. And then I think that's totally valid. If the only reason somebody wants to learn or improve their English is just to be able to perform in those meetings, or maybe they can continue using subtitles, nothing wrong with that. The question is it that the only thing you would use your English for? And I'm not saying there's nothing wrong with that. And maybe there are other reasons why this person would like to improve their skills, or and in that case, maybe it's worth it to invest the
Hmm.
time, even when it looks like AI is going to replace the need of learning the language or even being able to hold a conversation, even a simple conversation in English.
Hmm. Yeah, and I think it is also goes back to what we were talking about a moment ago, which is culture. Language and culture are very like they are linked together. Like, you cannot separate them. So if you automate the interaction by using AI, you're going to miss a lot of details that are not verbal. Yeah, and that are part of how the person conceives the world, how the other person reacts, how the other person communicates, because they come from a different background. So like there is no way to translate that.
Right. You're totally right. And also you, in my experience, one of the most beautiful things of learning a language, and this is for me, but it has been learning like more of the way of being of that in that culture, or letting myself be transformed by that culture. And that's something that happened to me, and that was very intentional, and it was very open to that. And in my case, there's like an American identity that is connected to more like my online business, my entrepreneurial endeavors, and that maybe that doesn't resonate so much in terms of identity with my who I was when I was born in Argentina, or maybe what my idea of being an Argentinian. So to me, learning English and working on that and spending a lot of time with the English language was an opportunity to learn and invest more in that identity and that part of myself. And that's very connected to many things I do right now as a professional.
Yeah, there are some studies, maybe you're familiar with them, that speak about how a person's identity changes depending on the language they use, because they learn the words or the communication, but also they absorb types of behaviors they associate with the language. So I am way more
Mhm.
sociable in English, for example. And I have
Yeah.
an anecdote. I have an anecdote here, Walter. I had a girlfriend who was American. Man, like I like that communication, that love language in English for me doesn't work, because for me English is a work language. It's not a
Mm.
love language. Yeah. So like whenever I want to talk to my girlfriend or to my kids or to whoever, I want to express that love. I have to do that in Spanish because it's my native language. I couldn't do it in English.
Yeah, that's the language of the heart for you.
It is. It is. So it always goes back to like you develop like particular personality traits or strengths and also weaknesses depending on on the language you're using. Could you give us maybe another example of how learning a language transforms you, either in terms of how you see yourself, your personality, how you show yourself in front of other people? If you could give us some other examples of how a person is transformed through language learning. Yeah, maybe particular aspects of your identity or your personality.
Yeah. So I can tell you about when I my third language when I was learning piano. I was going to a music school in Argentina. And my idea was to continue my music studies, my piano studies in Germany or Austria. And that was my main motivation to learn German. And in the process, I learned a lot about the German culture, and also my last name sounds German, so it's connected in a sense to my roots or to my identity. In even from the name, even the name sounds German. Um,
Hmm.
Although there are many Walters in Uruguay, where I live right now, so people when they see my name, they are confused. They have no idea where I come from. So it was an opportunity to connect with um, a different type of culture, like more maybe there's this stereotype of Germany or Austria, these countries like very rigorous or more disciplined, and that was an opportunity to embody some of that and to practice some of that and to see how it felt, and I liked it. And I started becoming and integrating some of that into my way of being. And then when I started learning Italian, it's like I threw that completely.
You went the opposite way.
I went the opposite, and that's a beautiful contrast. And my first language exchange, the first tandem partner that I had was a German girl who was very fluent in Italian, and so she was helping me practice Italian. And like the contrast for her was huge in terms of a German learning Italian. Like this very different when an Argentinian is learning Italian, because or anyone from Latin America is feels very close. To me it feels even closer than Spain in a sense, and that's might be weird. So, and the latest addition to after Italian I learned Portuguese, and that was kind of similar to Italian in the sense of the friendliness and the values or the way of being that it evoked in me. And then the language that I'm learning right now is Thai, and I'm learning that mostly for spiritual reasons. I'm a Buddhist, and I practice Thai Buddhism, and so I have a strong connection. I feel a strong connection with Thailand for that reason. And it's another opportunity to becoming a little bit as people from Thailand. In I mean, we get to choose which values we want to embody, and in which ways we want to let ourselves be transformed. And I try to be intentional about that as well. It's not like, okay, I will buy the whole culture.
Hey there, if you're enjoying the podcast, imagine how much more progress you could make with consistent, specialized support every week. Introducing the Fluent English Pro membership, designed specifically for busy professionals like you who want to keep improving their English even on a busy schedule. You'll find fluency activities, tutorials, mini courses, vocabulary builders, and live events, all focused on work and business English. Whether it's mastering international meetings, doing presentations, or answering tricky emails, this space is built to help you grow. If you're serious about your communication skills, visit fluentenglishpro.com/members and subscribe today. That is fluentenglishpro.com/members. Let's turn your English into your biggest professional asset. Mhm. Yeah, not to mention, and this is a whole different conversation, Walter. Like how much gets lost in translation. And for example, if it's like a spiritual journey or a religious journey, a lot of the words when they get translated, like you don't get to see the multiple meanings they have in the original language. They can mean multiple things. Yes, for example, I know the word Buddha has multiple meanings in its original language, but for us it only represents the figure of a spiritual leader. Yeah, because that's like what the translation has done. So I think learning language will help you connect way more deeply with that spiritual journey. But that's a whole other conversation about like what gets lost in translation. But I'm really happy that you're going through that journey in the language.
Yeah, thank you.
It's great to hear that. All right, going back to the language learning, Walter. There are two big barriers to opening these doors that language give us, and I think they are like they could be one or they can be two, depending on how you look at them. uh Insecurity and perfectionism.
Mm.
Yeah, those are like hard ones to tackle. We want to sound perfect, or we are afraid of not being um considered or seen as professional, in the case, for example, of professionals. How can we break free? You can like cover them separately or cover them as one. How can we break free from insecurity and perfectionism when we are learning English, particularly when we are learning English because we want to have better job opportunities or we want to study abroad?
Um, I think that's a great question, and that's something very useful. That's something that people are very concerned about. Like they want to get over this, and being a perfectionist or having a lot of insecurity or lack of confidence can get in the way of creating the opportunities we want for our lives. I believe that it's great to have tons of practice in very safe environments. And what I'm saying here is if you need to practice your speaking skills, put yourself in situations or get together with people who are going to help you feel safe and comfortable. And I believe that there is a place to be uncomfortable in our learning, and there's a place to be comfortable or to feel safe. We can play with both. We want to stretch ourselves, and at the same time we want to be gentle and we want to be careful and mindful of the people we are practicing with and the context we're practicing in. To give you an idea, there's one experience is if I'm practicing, if I have a language exchange, for example, somebody from the United States or somebody from UK, and we get together once a week to practice. Maybe I'm exchanging Spanish for English. There's one experience if I'm practicing with somebody who is respectful and kind and encouraging, to versus practicing with somebody who maybe is not so encouraging or maybe is not so kind in the way they are providing feedback, and that increases our perfectionism. If for somebody who has those tendencies, being a perfectionist, and maybe they are trying to some people need to practice making more mistakes, and all for other people's maybe the practice would be to get more accurate and be more precise. I met many students who they don't care how many mistakes they're making, and they're very extroverted. Maybe there's some correlation between extroverted personalities, they don't care, they can speak, and introverted personalities, like they are more careful, they tend to be more in their head, and they want to speak correctly and perfectly, and they love reading and they want to be very precise. And there's some, I notice sort of a correlation. It's not always like that 100% of the time. So what I'm saying is creating uh, gentle spaces for to reduce those tendencies that we know we have.
I'm thinking like this is one of the most common themes in all the conversations I've had is like people being afraid of making mistakes and like forcing yourself to integrate mistakes as part of life. Like you have to. It's not like the mistake is something you have to avoid. It's something you have to go through. Gosh. And as a
Um,
teacher, I mean, I think it's a cultural thing. We're both Latin American. We know like how harsh parents are when they judge their kids because they did this or they behave like that. And I'm sure it happens in other cultures. But I've been part of the system of education, and man, this creates such a harsh and horrible perspective on making mistakes because you get punished every time you make a mistake. It's like, how are you supposed not to make mistakes when you are learning? Like you
right.
have to make those mistakes. But the system just works that way. It sucks, but
Right.
it is
Yeah.
what it is. And like there are other spaces where we can approach that it is okay. The fact that it is okay to make mistakes. Habits. If I am a perfectionist, Walter, and that is getting in my way to changing my life, to improving my language skills, what are the steps, simple steps, one or two I could take today or this week, or a changing habits in order to reduce my fear of making mistakes or my self judgment, like that perfectionism thing?
I would say start with something small and very tiny. There's a great book called Tiny Habits by BJ Fogg. There's a TED talk on that as well. Um, I know that there's also Atomic Habits, and maybe in terms of a recipe and how to engineer that, I've seen people having great results, myself included, with Tiny Habits. And it's all about breaking things down like into manageable parts. It sounds very simple and it sounds like almost silly, and at the same time it works. So when we get overwhelmed, get and when we stay in our head and we say I don't want to do this, or I don't feel like doing this, or it has to be perfect, sometimes what we're avoiding is breaking that down. This big action or this big fear. And one thing we can try is, for example, in terms of fear of speaking, it's like maybe I can go to this place where I know that there's somebody who speaks English and say hi, or how are you, like introduce myself, like the first step. And you can call that a win, and be fine with that. Or when I know that many learners are beating themselves up for not being able to hold a long conversation, or they might be thinking, "Oh, I should be ready to have a 10-minute or 5-minute conversation in English, and I can even do that." Okay, well, start by practicing a 1-minute intro speech, like where you tell people what you do, and practice relaxing into that with one person. Send an audio message to somebody you know you're practicing your English with. 30 seconds
Mhm.
or 15 seconds. You can do that. You can absolutely do that.
Great. So take small steps, experiment, allow yourself to make mistakes, do little things, take little steps. All right, that's a great perspective. That's a very, very interesting perspective. Good. I hope that the people listening to this episode right now are encouraged to think of that tiny step they can take right now in order to reduce their fear, reduce their need for control or for perfectionism, and continue advancing in their language learning journey. Walter, appreciate all the knowledge you have shared with us today. I'm sure you have a lot more to share, and I'm sure you, like, listeners, are going to benefit a lot from all what you have to talk about, because you have a very interesting intersection between life coaching and language coaching, and like they get connected together. So it's a very particular take. I know you have a podcast as well. You offer language coaching, you offer life coaching. So tell us a bit more of where we can find you, a little bit about your podcast, which is bilingual. Yeah. So, like, how can we connect more with you and the content you create?
Sure. So my podcast is the name is Poder Aprender. You can find it on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or on poderaprender.com, also on YouTube. This year I started putting out episodes in English. It started in Spanish, and I did for a very long time. It was a solo podcast in Spanish. And this year, and this was a stretch for me. I started doing a podcast in English, doing the podcast episodes in English. That wasn't a stretch. And now I'm alternating languages. And for the time being, at the time of this recording, that's my plan is to continue this. And I've been doing interviews in English. Lately, I've been doing interviews in English where I'm interviewing people. And I've done some solo episodes as well. And usually the Spanish episodes I'm doing solo podcasting. So in that podcast in Poder Aprender, I talk all about it's all about language learning, skill building, um, and hobbies. And I also include topics around personal development and how to grow as human beings. And so that's one place where people can find me. And the other would be on my website, walterfreiberg.com, and where they can learn more about my life and language coaching offers.
Mhm. Great. Thank you very much, Walter. For those people listening, the links to Walter's podcast and to his website are going to be there in the description of this episode. So go subscribe to the podcast or to his podcast, yes, Poder Aprender, on Spotify and on Apple Podcasts. Check out his website. And Mr. Thank you so much for being our guest today. Appreciate all the information you have shared with us.
Thank you, David. It was fantastic. I appreciate you.